But the only way to win is not to play.
That's true. That's true. That would have been a great line for this finale. Hi everyone, I am TV critic Darren Franich of Entertainment Weekly. I am joined today to talk about the series finale of Game of Thrones with Features Editor Sarah Rodman. And of course, joining us from his compound in Austin, our man in Westeros, Editor-at-Large, James Hibberd. So much to talk about here, guys. This was a finale to a show that we have all been talking about for a very long time.
So much time in.
Sarah, what were your general thoughts about the finale?
My general thoughts were, I feel like I'm in the camp of people that I didn't absolutely love it, but I definitely didn't hate it. There were things that I liked about it. There were things that made me groan. But I was sort of psyched at how funny some of it was, because I'm always here for the Westeros humor. But my absolute most favorite thing about it is the return of Edmure Tully.
Yes, thank you. When you said funny, I was like, you gotta mention the return of Edmure Tully.
And the single best moment in the whole episode is Sansa saying to him, sit down. Sit down, Edmure Tully, this is not your time.
Because that did feel like a return of, the show could be really funny, and especially it could be really funny with the sort of egomaniacal, duel of people who think they should be on the throne. And yeah, I just loved him sitting up and saying, well guys, you all know me, I've been captured, I've learned something about statecraft, I think he said.
Statecraft,
that was a big, that was a big moment for me. So James, Sarah says didn't love, didn't hate. Where do you stand on the finale? As someone who, you have had a little bit more time to at least digest the narrative points of the finale.
Yeah, I've been sitting on the narrative points for over a year now, and I can't believe I can actually say Jon kills Daenerys at this point, because that's been pinging around in my head for 14 months during every single conversation I have had about Game of Thrones. It's like I'm constantly thinking, don't say Jon kills Daenerys, don't say Jon kills Daenerys. So, to be able to have that out is such incredible relief. And I think that, even though I'm kind of, wiped out from this marathon of covering this season, I thought it was gorgeously well made, terrifically well acted finale that had the elements to be satisfying given how many storylines they're wrapping up. You had the huge tragic death. You had an answer to the big question of who will end up in the Iron Throne, except not in the way you expected. And you have this rather fitting and sometimes pretty wonderful fates for most of the characters you care about. And I think that to some extent your enjoyment of the finale depended on your feelings about the divisive episode 5. That if you buy Daenerys' Mad Queen turn, then what happens next flows pretty logically from that. Whereas if you didn't think that was earned and that rang false to you, then you're probably watching it with your arms folded and just saying, well, this is all BS.
Harumph. I was watching it with my arms folded a little bit. I did not really like this finale, although I did think that the sort of 10 storylines that James was talking about, there were a couple that ended in a way I found interesting. But I'd love to know, actually, Sarah, what was your perspective on the whole Dany twist? Because I feel like that's the thing that people are still going to be talking about with this finale.
So her becoming the Mad Queen, or the twist of him stabbing her?
Both, I guess. First, her decision last week, and then how that played out this week.
So I think I actually saw a great cut on Twitter that intercut Dany sort of on the dragon, about to torch King's Landing, showing Missandei being beheaded, showing her kissing Mormont goodbye, showing the dragon being shot out of the sky. That actually would have been a great thing for the show to do, to be like, hey, remember when all these terrible things happened to her and her whole life has been terrible, and this entire time she's been talking about burning stuff down? That's gonna happen now. I was not as upset. I agree with the people that it wasn't earned within the scope of this season, but I have been someone that's always been like, hey guys, she burns people alive. That's not so great. And she keeps saying she's owed this thing, and it's her birthright, and she always, she never necessarily seemed crazy to me.
Yeah.
but she didn't always seem very nice.
Well, so what was your interpretation? Because one of the things I liked about the finale was that Emilia Clarke's performance I thought was really interesting. Sometimes I think the show has kind of forced her into this position of kind of just playing this like super stalwart leader, but I thought that she had interesting material, and it was really hard for me, in a fun way, to figure out, was she quote unquote crazy? Was this kind of part of her expansive plan? She had that great speech, which I found deeply unsettling, but in a way that I liked, about basically saying like, hey, we're taking this show on the road.
Right, exactly.
We're gonna go liberate
Watch out,
everybody.
world.
Yeah.
We're coming.
But it is funny, I mean, there is this whole sort of like, did she experience some kind of a break? Was it a thing that had been sort of slow building? But I kind of thought, I don't really know how I feel about her and what she did. And I kind of liked it more in this episode, that it did feel kind of ambiguous, even if for the other characters, they ultimately decided that she had gone crazy.
Right.
Which,
I just feel like crazy is strong. I feel like it was sort of her plan all along, and I liked that the disparity between sort of the big dictatorial speech in front of the troops and then the much smaller moment between her and Jon when she was like, we're going to get to decide what's right, and we know what's right, which I actually thought was much more sympathetic and interesting, but much more sort of indicative of like, I am in charge here.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, we're going to do this together, and I don't care about anybody else. And I feel like, maybe it wasn't earned that she was crazy, but I feel like the show absolutely made it clear that this was probably what was going to happen. So James, you actually talked to Emilia about this, and I know that she had some mixed feelings about the way this was done. But what I thought was really interesting about your story was that she had said that the directors had said to her over the years, hey, could you do that take a little bit differently? Because they knew what was going to happen to her, and she was sort of confused by that. And so I thought it was interesting, like, you actually getting to talk to her about her feelings about it.
Yeah, I was extremely happy with that interview, and I've been so excited to write it. I've had it kind of going through my head for so much throughout this whole season. And I like that she was very candid and very open about her conflicted feelings about it and her process. And just as an actress who's put so much of herself into the part and sort of through some personal struggles, sort of drew a lot of strength from it as well. When you get those final scripts and you see the character taking on this dark turn that you personally wouldn't agree with, it was, and especially having it do a dark turn in such a tight number of episodes, it was a real acting challenge. And I think that one thing I would think that people can agree on is even if you don't agree with her storyline, at least I personally thought that Emilia Clarke's been knocking it out of the park this season in terms of her performance. Just from the very first episode, she's had setback after setback after setback, and she kind of reacts to each one a little differently, with increasing amounts of despair and frustration and anger and coldness and desperation. And I thought that really came across on screen. So I thought, as good as she could have done it is what she did.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit like, again, still struggling with what she had decided to do in the previous episode. I just found it very exciting, that scene that you were describing of her talking to Jon. Again, just not really knowing how to feel about her, but liking that. I think if anything, my main complaint was I kind of totally lost track of Jon somewhere along the way this season.
Because he wasn't doing anything.
He wasn't really doing anything, and I guess that, maybe one problem that I have with the show's final act is it felt like there was a time where Thrones was very clear about this idea of like, this is not a world where classical heroism can succeed. It's a lot more complicated than that. And in this scene, you kind of have Jon doing a pretty classically heroic thing, I think. I mean, it's complicated, and obviously the person he's killing, you might ask yourself, did it have to go down in that exact way? But even the scene where Tyrion is saying, like, Jon, you've always kind of wanted what's best for everyone. It felt like the Jon Snow aspect of this episode just felt a little blander by comparison to, just like all the stuff that was going through Dany's mind and all the stuff that had been sort of building up in her for so long.
Especially when you consider at the Battle of Winterfell, basically all he did was yell at a dragon. And then last week, he was just sort of like, oh crap, what's happening? I'm just gonna walk around and be upset. And tonight he was like, oh God, now I don't even get to be the king. There was a teeny tiny part of me that just for him that was like, I'm sick of doing the right thing. You know what? I'm the heir to the throne. Let's do this. After he killed her. And also, like I asked James last night, there was nobody else in that throne room, and the dragon took her away. He could have just lied. Why did he say he did it?
What if he'd walked out and just been like, guys, like the craziest thing just happened. The craziest thing just happened. The dragon came up and took her. It was weird. But anyhow, I guess I should be in charge now.
Exactly. Like, here's his opportunity to seize the throne. So here's a question from last night that I had, because I love how everybody picked up on the fact that the dragon destroys the Iron Throne because the dragon understands this complicated like metaphor that the throne is the reason that everything is bad. But did he not kill Jon because Jon's a Targaryen and he recognized that Jon's a Targaryen so that he wouldn't be able to kill him with fire?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd love to know your interpretation of it, James. I did there'd been moments between Drogon and Jon earlier that, to me, kind of read the dragon knowing this is a Targaryen. But yeah, like, was that part of your interpretation? Yeah. That, like, this is sort of the dragon saying, well, I can't kill you, you're part of the team too, but yeah, I'm going to express...
I'm so mad at the situation.
I'm going to express myself symbolically.
Yeah, I think Jon can be hurt by fire. We saw in season 1 when he was fighting with the White and he picked up the lantern and he burned his hand. Just like Daenerys' brother was also able to be burned by fire. I sort of think about the fire immunity thing as is not something that all Targaryens have. It's like this genetic thing that only some of them have. And I do think that Drogon maybe could have killed Jon. I'm assuming, and Darren, with your knowledge of Fire and Blood, you probably know this. I'm sure dragons have killed other Targaryens during all those battles. But I do think that in terms of the Iron Throne of it all, that the way I sort of interpret it is that the Targaryens have this sort of telepathic connection, right, with the dragons. And Dany's been riding around on Drogon all this time. She's probably been thinking about the Iron Throne a lot. That's probably been something that's been fixated in her mind. And so when Drogon comes in and he sees his mom dead and he sees that damn throne there, he's like, you know what? That's the reason right there.
Right, I'm not going to kill the person who did it.
Take her off and snack on her.
I'm just so frustrated with this political situation. I'm just so. This is all because of ambition and.
Exactly.
No, I am. I'll have to double check on that because the powers of the Targaryens are kind of confusing to me in general. But this is a reason to reread Fire and Blood, which I'll definitely take.
But I do feel like he knew Jon was a Targaryen, so even if he wasn't immune to fire, was like, I can't kill basically my relative. He's his uncle.
They are uncle, cousin, father-in-law.
The dragons are Dany's children, and Dany is his aunt. Maybe they're cousins. I don't know.
It's funny because when the throne got disintegrated into lava, I sort of thought for a second, so no one's going to be in charge anymore. And I also thought that because King's Landing has been destroyed, there's no kind of central capital here. But immediately after this sort of part of the episode ended, we sort of shifted into the reformation of Westeros. We talked already about the return of Edmure Tully, played by the great
Tobias
Menzies, who's just always so wonderful, and he's about to be on The Crown as well, I believe. So he's a person that it's always just great to see him on TV. But I think that besides the Jon and Dany stuff, maybe even more so today, everyone's talking about the ultimate decision for who would be in charge, who would sit on the not so Iron Throne. So Sarah, you had Bran winning, right? I mean, that seemed pretty obvious.
Absolutely. I actually did guess him at one point as sort of, I think a lot of people did guess him as the most unlikely person. They'll probably do that. But I did absolutely guess that the throne would exist no more. I thought the throne would be destroyed. I didn't realize it would be by a dragon. I thought it was going to be a Night King destruction situation. But I do enjoy, maybe my second favorite thing was when basically Samwell Tarly tried to invent democracy and everybody laughed at him. They're like, and maybe my horse will have a vote. And we're like, wait a minute, this could be not a terrible idea. And that actually felt like the most on-brand thing about the show. Oh, goodness, no, we're not going to let the people decide.
What is a weekend?
Yes, I was not truly expecting. But once they did it, I was like, yeah, that seems about right.
So you were kind of like, it seemed like inevitable somehow that it would be Bran.
Given that they sort of sent everybody else, all the other Starks, off to the 4 Winds or to the 3 Winds, then it seemed like, I mean, not that I agree with it.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was interesting because, James, I mean, you've already posted your great interview with Isaac Hempstead Wright, who plays Bran. And, like, is it fair to say that he and everybody involved in the show is aware that, like, this is probably the least expected, or that, like, you know, people have had a complicated relationship with Bran's time on the show, so this is perhaps a total opposite day as far as what the expectation was?
I mean, I think every publication entertainment publication over the last 8 years at some point has run a poll. Who do you want to end up on the Iron Throne? And the actors and producers can see, as well as everybody else, you know, who comes up at the top of that and who comes at the bottom of that. You know, there's something kind of hilariously audacious about this situation, because HBO's marketing has been, you know, promoting the idea, who will end up on the Iron Throne for so long, and then for the show to choose, let's not choose anybody that the people really want, let's choose this other person instead, is this kind of anti-fan service, an era of fan service choice. But at the same time, it's kind of logical from what happens in terms of what choices that the characters would potentially make. And if you're looking at it from the point of view of an exhausted Westeros citizen who's been enduring a decade of hellish existence and war, the idea of not another flawed human, but rather, you know, Bran the broken, you know, Bran the Bran bot, you know, taking over with his knowledge of all like time and space, and just making logical, rational, fair decisions for everyone, that would seem like kind of a nice deal.
Haven't these people seen War Games, though? That's the exact opposite of what you want to do, is like put the, like, you know, mega computer in charge.
But the only way to win is not to play.
That's true.
But
that would have been a great line for this finale, too.
I am obsessed with the idea that if Bran knew all this was going to happen, like, you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Why do you think I came all this way? Is he actually evil? Because if he knew this was going to happen, he could have saved all the people of King's Landing from being burned alive. Like, this was his sneaky plan from all along.
And then James and I were talking a little bit in our podcast this morning about, like, you know, the last time you see Bran, he's like leaving his small council to run things. Well, the implication is he's going to go off and, like, maybe try to warg into a dragon, which would make him the most powerful ruler in the history of Westeros. He's not someone who's riding a dragon. He could literally be a dragon. So the evil Bran is a theory I'm totally on board with.
But if he could warg into a dragon, why didn't he do it before?
Because he wanted to end up exactly where I'm actually really liking this fan theory, because the last shot of Bran as he's being wheeled out of that small council meeting is you know, they make this kind of quip about them not saying his name, you know, correctly, the salutation correctly as he leaves, and he gives this kind of smile that nobody can see. But now that I'm thinking about it, what if that's an evil, you all fell for it, and now I'm exactly where I want to be smile? I'm actually kind of digging this, you know, and I'm not a person who likes fan theories, but I like this one.
You know, the minute last night that he was like, "Why do you think I came all this way?" I was like, "Oh, Kaiser Soze, what's up?"
Because also, I mean, I kind of barely understand the Three-Eyed Raven stuff, but, like, I believe the previous Three-Eyed Raven was, like, almost immortal before Bran showed up.
And he was trapped in a tree. I thought Bran was going to end up trapped in a tree.
Right. But now I'm wondering, like, if Bran can get one of those cool trees, like, planted down in King's Landing, because you know, the whole thing is, oh, like, you know, he's not going to have an heir, so we're never going to have a situation where there's some totalitarian thing. But if he's an immortal who can control a dragon and also knows what's going to happen before anyone else does, he could be the worst villain to ever be in charge of Westeros.
He's like, sure, Sansa, you can go ahead and have the North. I have no problem with that. Also why didn't every single other person, including Yara Greyjoy, who had already had her independence, be like, wait, we can just be our own thing? Let's do that.
Okay, Sarah, I'm glad you bring this up. This was my main sort of complaint about that, is that, like, I mean, the lords and ladies of Westeros have started wars over, like, nothing in the last few years. Like they've literally been like, So that Baratheon might be a Lannister. We're going to war. We're taking over. So it was so weird that, like, Yara Greyjoy...
Who already had a deal to be free.
Already had a deal to be free and Ireland to be free. What's the Prince of Dorne even doing there? I feel like he'd be like, yo, guys, we're going to stay down here. Like, we got good weather. We're not going to deal with you guys anymore. You all made fun of us in season 5. We'll show you. But yeah, I was wondering about that also. Like, why would any other kingdoms want to be a part of this new Six Kingdoms setup?
Especially once they knew they could. Was it just like, oh, she's a sister, so she gets special dispensation? I feel like that is not enough.
Teacher's pet.
Yeah. James.
I mean, I guess my two thoughts on that are, one, they did imply that Sansa had like a big army force there to kind of back up potentially her veto and holding out, and the other ones presumably didn't. The other thought I have is, isn't there some benefit to being part of the United Kingdoms of Westeros? Are there some non-Brexit like trade benefits to being part of this collection? Is being an independent country necessarily always the best option? Maybe not. I don't know. I've no idea what their trade tariff situation is like.
You're saying like Winterfell is kind of like Scotland. They're kind of like, we're good, we're out. Like, but like Dorne is like, we're Wales. We'll hang out there. I can say that because I'm friends with a Welshman. So one thing I want to just kind of generally talk about as we kind of come to a close here is we do have this sort of parade of pretty happy endings.
Yes.
For the Stark kids. Sarah, did you kind of like the fact that we ended with these people all kind of turning out pretty okay? I mean, even Jon gets punished, but it didn't feel like a punishment to me. He gets to go hang out with his like wildling.
It felt like punishment to me, and it's funny because I was not like a Jon person necessarily before this, but I just feel like he's been so robbed this whole season. And they're like, just go be dirty, and like, why don't they have hats? They've been cold forever, and they can make these big coats. Why don't they make hats? And did he just abandon his post at the Night's Watch?
Great question. This is the question
Is he
that
the Lord Commander now? And what are they watching for if all the zombies are dead?
Well, okay, like
they're just watching for night now?
Because it's also like, why are the wildlings going back north if they have more verdant landscape down here they could theoretically hang out in? But like, I think he's going with them. He's going to go live with them. He's going to be pals with them.
He's going to find another ginger lady to love.
Hey, there we go. He's going to, and hopefully this time not wind up with her dying in his arms.
Right,
that's the plan. He's had a rough romantic history.
That
so
didn't
far.
seem happy to me. I think like if you could have been king and now you're hanging out with like people who suckled at a giant's teat, I don't know. That wouldn't be my choice, but I'm not Jon Snow. And I know this is wrong and bad, and I shouldn't say this, but I was secretly hoping when Arya was on that boat that Gendry was going to sidle up beside her and be like, I'm the Lord of Storm's End. I can do whatever I want. Let's go on some adventures, girl. But I know she needs to be on her own, but I am super looking forward to her spinoff, West of Westeros. Because what is out there?
Each week she goes and finds a new island and it has some exciting
Gets
new
a new
adventures.
face and finally uses that power.
Let's see the face power. Let's see I want the fan theory where someone says that she was secretly someone else during this final season. That's what I'm kind of interested in.
And I was happy for Sansa. How did you feel about the Stark children's fates?
Unhappy with all the happiness was how I felt. I wanted more gloom and doom for them. I don't know, it just felt very wish fulfillment-y to me that like 2 Starks wind up on thrones at the end. I'm totally with James, and he's talked me into liking the sort of Bran twist a little bit more because it is just so unexpected. Although we all know the truly unexpected thing would have been King Gendry, the only person who could have possibly been in charge.
And
of
who
Westeros
actually
at the
was
end.
the next person in line. I've been beating this drum. He is Robert Baratheon's heir.
He's been named the true-born heir to Robert Baratheon. That's the bookend that I wanted. 2 unprepared Baratheons in charge of Westeros.
That's a great show. Unprepared Baratheons.
But I did. I'm kind of with you. The Arya stuff. That was the stuff that I really did like. I mean, it felt it was hard for me to take just because, like with someone like Cersei, I wanted more from Arya this season, and I sort of felt like her sort of saying, like, I want to go explore. I'm not sure I'd felt that before with her character, but I did just like this idea of, like, you know, there are people who are kind of settling down to run things, and Arya gets to kind of go off and have these more adventures. She's kind of finally losing this weight that she's been carrying since the very beginning of the show.
And maybe she comes back like Marty McFly, and you guys, I've been west of Westeros, and they need our help.
It's like the end of Battlestar Galactica. She winds up in Times Square. Like, what? Like, there's so much more going on over here. Spoilers alert. It was 10 years ago. It's fine. It's fine. James, last question for you. They've said this is the end of the show. There's one prequel that is currently in production and possibly more prequels to come. But this episode featured a moment where Tyrion said to Jon, let's talk about this again in 10 years. Now, again, right now they're saying the show's over with. This is their ending. But given, like, the real-world realities of HBO and the possibility of what a reunion could do ratings-wise, what would you give the likelihood of there ever being a sequel, reunion, sequel series, any kind of continuation of this story with this creative team and with these performers?
Well, when you say with this creative team, I don't think Dan and David will be back. I feel like they dedicated over a decade of their lives to it, and they're happy with what they made, and they're done. In terms of the cast, it's tough to say. That is a great question, and nothing would surprise me. At the end of shooting this, or near the end of shooting this, rather, I mean, all the main cast were done. They were just completely spent. I mean, if you asked them if they'd want to do something immediately after this in this world, they would say no. But once the paychecks go away and some years go by, and you start to feel nostalgic for it, and fans start to feel nostalgic for it, and HBO offers you a rowing boat full of money, could we get my dream show, Small Council, Big Problems, where it's the procedural adventures of the new Small Council as they deal with managing Westeros. Maybe it wouldn't surprise me. I think HBO is going to look at how the prequel pilot comes in after this summer, and I think they're just going to kind of decide from there. There's no need to make any big decisions right away.
Small Council, Big Problems.
Yes.
That's the spinoff.
I'm watching that.
That's the one that I want.
And hopefully Emir Tully is like on this council as well, and Gendry, because like the Lord people that were there, Rob and Aaron. We need to find out what's happening with suddenly glowed up Rob and Aaron.
Rob and Aaron, where's he been? Do you think they just forgot about him at this point?
I thought he was dead.
There'd just be this recurring joke of Edmure Tully being just told to shut up by everybody whenever he tries to interject anything. He kind of slunks off.
It's a sitcom, so it has a laugh track. Shut up, Edmure Tully.
Yeah, what's the role in the Small Council that he's deliriously not prepared for? What if he's the new Master of Whispers and he just keeps blabbing secrets to everyone?
Yes.
I was just told that there's a revolution.
Oh, that was a secret? My bad. I'm Edmure Tully.
Studio audience applauds. Studio audience laughs.
All right, we need to make this happen.
Guys, I think that about wraps it up. James, anything else you're doing coming up that people should be looking out for on EW.com? You've already got a lot of coverage up on the website.
The fabled Jaime Lannister interview that was pushed from last week will be going up later today, and I'll have something. I don't think I can publicly tease it yet, but I'll have a little story later this week.
You can't publicly tease it yet, James. We're friends.
Because it's a question that if somebody else interviewed somebody else and thought to ask them, they could hypothetically get. So I don't want to put it out there publicly just yet.
I'm glad someone is on the Edmure Tully interview. Yeah. That's the one. This is great that we're going to finally get a full oral history of the Edmure Tully moment.
Right.
Everybody, that wraps it up for us here. Do check out EW.com for all the Thrones coverage this week. He has been Editor-at-Large James Hibberd. She has been Features Editor Sarah Rodman. I've been TV critic Darren Franich. That's a wrap on 8 years of Game of Thrones.